Hey folks, my name is Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Enriquez. Nickname Bootser. Blackhand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Well, I promised you a profile on Chuy Martinez, and I'm going to bring it today. You know, Chuy was an old friend of mine. He got made right before me in Folsom State Prison. I was made in 1985, and Chuy was made, I believe, in 1984, just a few months before I was made. We were in Folsom in Shoe 2, and the one thing I remember about Chuy, massive mustache. He had a massive mustache. Like, if you were a mobster, that's the kind of mustache you were supposed to have. And he was a really gentle soul. I know that's when I say these things about these men, all you see them from is from their exterior, right? There's a narrative that's been created about these individuals through social media and mainstream media that they're killers, cutthroats, cold-blooded. But that's not the Mariano Martinez that I knew. Mariano was born January 22nd, 1958, and he died of liver failure on June 24th, 2014 in Springfield, Illinois. I recall he was with Chuy in ADX, and I have a picture of them. I'll find that and I'll try to include it here. But he began to gain weight, and he did not like to take pictures. Chuy did not like to take pictures, not towards the end of his life. Because I recall reading a letter or listening to a phone call between Raymond Shryak, Widow Chuy, and his daughter, Reina. And when Widow sent the picture, he instructed her not to give it to anybody or make copies because Chuy didn't want the image out. But the Chuy I knew was very intelligent, extremely intelligent. I remember he got caught with a knife. We had a knife on the tier, right? We have multiple knives, obviously, or what you guys may know as shanks, right? But we had a knife, and Chuy had secreted it, hidden it, in a potato chip bag. He opened it up, carefully placed the knife within the potato chips, and sealed the bag. And it went through multiple major searches, like major shakedowns, where they tore up the whole prison and the whole block. And I remember that thing would sail through with a breeze. Until one time, a rookie cop went into his cell and found it. And Chuy was given some extra years for that, I believe. And he was always a level-headed guy, easily approachable, good with the camaradas. He didn't change when he got made. When he was inducted into the organization, he just did his thing. He would work out and play chess. He'd also play pinochle. He was my pinochle partner at times. It was me, Black Dan, Chewy, and Joe Morgan. We would always play pinochle on the yard and shoot too. And sometimes I was partnered up with whoever needed a partner, right? Either Black Dan, Joe, or Chewy. Whoever needed a partner, I was the partner. And I remember during that one of those games, I discovered that Joe Morgan cheated at pinochle. I recall he declared triple nuts or triple pinochle, which is three diamonds and three jacks of diamonds and three queens of spades. If you played pinochle, you know what triple nuts are. But he couldn't have had that because I had two of the cards that he needed. Actually, I had two cards, and he couldn't have had three. He could have only had two of the cards that he mentioned, right? So I knew right then he was cheating. But I was his partner, so I didn't say anything. You know, I was just a brand new brother, too. I was going to say, hey, bro, you're cheating. That's not cool. You know, just, okay, Joe Morgan cheats. It kind of shocked me because I thought these guys were filled with integrity. I never caught Chuy cheating. I never did, you know, and we were buds. You know, we were really close friends. And all of us during that period, well, not all of us, because about 10 of us got made there in Folsom, and it was just Chuy, Negro, and Spider from Cantaranas. We were all close. And I remained close to Negro Villalba, Sammy Villalba. But Chuy became like one of my allies in the streets, right? Like there are very few cardenas that you can really depend upon. But Chuy was one of them. He made sure that Gizmo and his crew took care of my family and me. He made sure my crew was okay and undisturbed on the streets. And I remember seeing him just before he got out. He had just got a notification that he was going to be released. And I was in the Pelican Bay Shoe visiting room, and he was right behind me. And I remember him turning around and saying, Caja. And I turned around and said, what's up, bro? And he says, I'm getting out. I'll be in touch. And I said, okay, cool. I didn't know if that was true or not, because most guys say they're going to be in touch, and they don't, right? But Chewy maintained communication with my crew, with my guy Huck, with my mom, everybody, right? Like Shy did as well in Black Dan. They took care of my mom. That's the one thing I give them credit for. They did that, right? I knew those guys were my brothers. And Chewy was my brother. He wasn't just a member, because there's two distinctions in the organization, right? There's a carnal in name, and there's a brother, right? That's your brother. Like they would say, he's a member, or he's my brother, right? I've heard multiple carnales say that. In fact, I used to hear Wino espouse that. Wino from La Rana, Thomas Grajeda espoused that quite a bit. But Chewy was really my brother. So when I heard about the difficulties he went through after he paroled, I was kind of taken aback. But to show you the kind of guy that Chewy was, I'm going to run this call. It's between Mariano Martinez, Chewy, and Sharky. Sharky's washed up. It was a crew guy from Orange County who had violated the norms of the organization. He was actually on Stranger's crew, and that was the opposing crew. Chewy and Stranger were at war. And, Chewy and Stranger were at war. This was a civil war that not too many people knew about. And it spread everywhere. This wasn't just an isolated incident where two cardenales are going at it. This occurred in Pelican Bay, on the streets, and in the general population throughout the prison. This is when that phrase disregard came in, right? When Tablas and Angel and Cuate began sending kites out to the main line to Sureños, telling them, if you're with this guy, if you do anything for him, you're going to get it too, right? Because he's no good. In fact, another content creator just mentioned something like that, right? Having received a kite about me. And this was their doing, right? Because this is sacrilegious to the organization, involving outsiders in organizational business. It was never done before this. But these are the guys that considered themselves los mejores, or verdaderos, right? They had created a little clique within the organization, which they thought they created, right? They were the best of the best. And that's what they believed. And they started putting people on the lista. And it was actually originated by Angel Valencia's stump, right? To politic on Chewy. I remember this years before. I told you the story about how Chewy attempted to stab Veracruz, but Veracruz pulled out a menudo can and started trying to stab Chewy. I told you that whole story, right? This is where that originated from. The campaign against Chewy originated here. In fact, Angel wasn't even there. He was in the shoe after eliminating Mo Ferral with Danny Boy Peña, Tupi from Monterio, and Negro from Artesia. But only Danny Boy and Stump got slammed for it. They got arrested for it and charged for that elimination. But Stump was in the hole. He couldn't have seen it, right? But I remember him grumbling about it in the shoe 2 yard. He was talking about Chewy's mustache. He says, man, he don't deserve that mustache. I deserve that mustache. Look at that thing he did with Veracruz. And I told him, I said, no, I was there, bro. He was packing. He had a big old shank. And he was inching toward the guy. And he was talking to him. And he was going to do it. It was going to be done. Right? It's just the guy knew. He had been hit twice before that. Veracruz had been hit twice before that. Once by Negro and once by Camarada in the weight pit. So before Chewy could pull steel, this guy pulled out his little menudo can and tried to poke Chewy, and then the gunner fired around. There was no chance to do it. But Angel Valencia ran with that. And that started the campaign against Chewy. That's really where it originated. The jealousy about him having a crew and not sharing the money, all that came later. And all that is like poppycock, you know. That's the real reason was Angel Valencia, talked to Cuate Crejeda and Tablas Castellano, and they started spreading that word about Chewy. F Chewy, he's no good, he's a coward, he didn't do that thing in Folsom like he was supposed to do. That's where it started. That was the genesis of the campaign against Mariano Martinez. But I want you to hear how much class he had, right? Chewy had class. Chewy had style, right? He had charisma, magnetism. He had strong socio-political skills. He was a man's man, right? And he was my brother. He was my friend. But here he talks with an individual by the name of Sharky, who was on Stranger's crew. And he's telling him, you're through. I want you to hear the call, listen to it, because it's in overt English. There's not even Spanish involved. Chewy just says what he has to say. So we'll listen to that call, and we'll come back and finish up this piece for Chewy, Mariano Martinez.
I wasn't aware what was going down yet, and you said, hey, Chewy, can you find out? And remember when I found out, and then that was the last contact me and you had?
Yeah.
Then I heard everything that I needed to hear as far as, feeling real disrespected and real disappointed in an individual that, I always 100%, I didn't trip, I feel like, okay, even if Sharky didn't go through with it, I could understand on one level, maybe there was that last piece of loyalty that, he wasn't going to, he just didn't do whatever he was supposed to do. It's hard for me to believe any of the crap, but there's just so much out there about you and what you did, and not just because somebody says so, but because of the way the people are like personally pissed off at you. Once again, it has nothing to do with me and Mono, but you pissed off some other gente because of something you didn't do. And they're the ones, they're not strangers. That's why, that much I'll tell you. They're not stranger. Because if it was stranger, I'd disregard every fucking thing he had to say.
So what have I done, homie? You gotta tell me, because I don't know what the is going on. Somebody's trying to give me a wreck, and I'm in the blues.
What? Hey, Shark, there's not, not everybody's trying to get you in a wreck, but yet everybody feels bad that you're in the wreck. You know what I mean? I think you know that you got yourself in a wreck, and now you're trying to feel out everybody and see how things are. Once again, I've never, I'm not one of them vatos that need to play games with shit. I'm always straight up with mine,
Exactly. That's why I called you right now, and I've been telling you the truth since day one.
That's why I'm talking to you, sir. That's why I'm talking to you, letting you know that pretty much that, you're through, they're after you, and it didn't have nothing to do with our side, but the decision has been made through a lot of people on the other side that about you, and that's what time it is. Now everybody's turning cold, and now they're switching shit, and the strangers, and now that little group's trying to do something, but hey, it's just a matter of time before they get Presido, and everybody's waiting to do their thing.
Hey, homie, but this is bullshit, though, homie.
Okay,
I never done nothing in my life to hurt anybody from you, homie.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do right now. Like I said, I know a few other things that ain't got nothing to do with this, that you personally f***ed up by disrespecting me. Now I told you what I had to tell you. What I will do is I'll call them gente and say, hey, check this out. So and so got a hold of me, and he wants to talk to somebody. I'll let you talk to whoever you got to talk to.
Damn, so how I disrespected you, homie?
Sharky, like I said, I'm not going to put it out there, but so let's leave it at that, let's not play this game all the way.
Nah, but the thing is that I'm not playing, homie. I've been there, homie. You know what I mean?
You've been there. With me, you say you've been there on one level, and then you up and put yourself in a punk ass position to do some stupid stuff. Like I said, I don't need to get into it. You know what it's about, and that's stupid stuff on a personal level. This other stuff is what you should be concerned about, And then, like I said, it has nothing to do with us. It's other people that are mad at you.
But I don't want nothing against you. That's the thing.
Okay, well, like I said, whatever. Myself, I would, I don't waste time. I'm not gonna waste time tracking you down. there's already enough people wanting to do that without it being me. You know, I can even give you that last piece of whatever loyalty or a friendship I thought that was there, or however you want to call it. You know, the best thing for you is to just get out of town. Keep on going, keep on stepping, and don't look back, because there ain't nothing nice for you in town.
But I never did nothing, man. That's the thing.
You're not listening to what I'm saying, are you?
Yeah, I'm listening, but
time will tell. Time always tells. I know this much. If you're not lying, time will tell.
But why should I run? See if
like I said, you could do what you want. You can always do what you want. I walked into a room with people that try to do me, and I did it because that's me. You don't have to run. You can stay in town. You suffer whatever consequences, if there are or if there isn't. That's your choice. Each man has to stand up for his own beliefs, and whatever, however he feels, that's what you do. I've always done it. I stand up for myself and my beliefs.
So originally, the individual he's talking to, Sharky, was on Chewy's crew with Gizmo from Artesia and Mono from VNE. That was like the core. There was another guy as well by the name of Boy from Big Top and Checo from Maravilla, right? Those were Chewy's guys, right? Sharky ends up switching up and goes on Stranger's team. And the thing is about this whole war is that Chewy didn't even know what was happening. One day, while he's with this girl Jessica, he's going to go collect some money, and somebody shoots at him. Pow, pow. And they shoot him in the arm and the finger, right? Relatively minor injuries. But he goes to the hospital. He calls everybody together. And they actually put together a plan to go to war. Chewy doesn't know what's up. He says he's going to go to the Bay and find out what's happening and find out if he's through or not. If he's through or not, he's going to cut his crew loose and tell them, hey, all right, I'm through. That's it. I'm done. You guys go your own way. But he finds out nobody, like us, he came to us, Benjamin Topo Peters, myself, a couple of other guys, like, hey, what's going on? Benjamin Topo Peters relays, hey, you're not on our lista. So he figured out it was an inside campaign. It originally came from Macho Prieto from Sinaloa, right? Prieto from Sinaloa. It was a carnal that got made into Hatchapi when I was there. He was the dummy that ran with it, right? So everybody thought that he was the one pushing the issue on Chewy, but Prieto wasn't there either. Wino and Angel and Guate and Tablas utilized Prieto to get the word out, right? They were good at staying behind the smoke screen. And Prieto was the dummy that ran with it, but it stuck on Chewy. It stuck. Because politics in the organization use a tiny bit of truth and a whole lot of BS, right? So true, Chewy was there. True, the guy pulled out a knife on Chewy. True, Chewy did not have a chance to pull out his knife. But Chewy was no coward. Chewy was not a coward, right? So as soon as Chewy was shot at, he was shot at actually by Cartoon from Cantaranas. That was discovered that it was Cartoon later, right? And then Gizmo from Artesia and another individual went down to Stranger in retaliation on Easter Sunday in 1998. Gizmo from Artesia, Chewy, and Mono all caravan down there. They had 3 or 4 cars. One individual in a truck had an AK-47, and Gizmo had a pistol. The individual in the truck had Stranger dead to rights, getting in his car with his wife, his child, and his brother. And he jumps off the car with the AK-47, but twists his ankle and falls down. Stranger sees this and is getting ready to run, and Gizmo from Artesia pulls out a gun and starts firing at him. Pow, 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 pow. Stranger abandoned his wife, his child, and his brother and ran. Left him there. In the middle of a shooting, leaves him there. And that kicked off the war. That's when it really kicked off, and it was on then. I mean, Chewy had a crew. They were ready to go. I'm sure the Stranger had his crew as well. And it all really started to, as well as when Chewy checked a camarada who came out from prison, who was sent out by Guaten Tablas. Chewy told him, hey, who the F do you think you are? You are not a carnal. You're not going to speak to me that way, nor are you going to speak to anybody else that way. And it created a lot of resentment within that crew, that sea facility crew. Because this kicked off to the sea and D facility war and the war on the main line, where camaradas were getting hit, right? Nobody got hit in the C and D facility war. It was just a war of words. It was a campaign, right? Chewy got shot. Stranger had a couple people from Rockwood, one of them being Angel. The other guy is Sharky from Orange County. He jumped the fence and went over to Stranger. Gizmo from Artesia and Mono from VNE were Chewy's main guys. They were like his sons. He was grooming these guys, and they were extremely loyal to him. Mono was the money guy. Mono from VNE was the money guy, and Gizmo was the trigger guy on Chewy's crew, and that was just a reality. That's when it all kicked off. Stranger didn't get shot at until 1998, but he began that was the beginning, the genesis of the Mexican Mafia Civil War. Chacho from Cantaranas was actually playing both sides of the fence. He was playing both sides of the fence. In fact, this even is extended to the county jail. The county jail war began in April 1998. There was a meeting between Chuy and Stranger at the airport in which Chewy told him, hey, if you want to go to war, we'll go to war. We'll do it. And Chewy met him there specifically so they can go through metal detectors and all that. Nobody can carry in a gun. They can speak openly about what they had to speak about. You know, and I want to correct something about John Turshak, right? Or as one of the viewers had said, John Turdsack, right? You named him, brother. That's John Turdsack now. But one of the things I said is that he was recording on his own before he was an FBI informant. I want to correct that. I found out that he was actually participating in consensual calls for the FBI when these recordings were made. It wasn't until he arranged the shooting at Mariano Martinez, Chewy, that he was considered a rogue informant. That's when he wasn't working with the feds no more. He went on his own, just started doing whatever. He went haywire, right? And as I mentioned, in the county jail, this really, really took off. There was a war in the gang module 4700, right? There were two schools, right? One which was controlled by Stranger and one which was controlled by Chewy, right? Gizmo from Artesia was arrested and placed into the county jail. The next day, Chewy, after the shooting at Stranger, John Turdsack, Chewy, Mariano Martinez, and Gizmo were arrested. And Gizmo ended up in the county jail. Bad spot to be in, man, because there was a war going on, and he almost got nailed, right? But he took over. He began taking over. In fact, a bunch of individuals, Smokey from Hazard, Gypsy from Artesia, were stabbed. Smokey was stabbed by Gypsy from Artesia, Stranger from 213, Bello from Redondo, actually eliminated somebody. That's the guy you hear about, Christian Knighton, Bello from Redondo, right? He was a camarada, but he was never a carnal. Don't be fooled by people professing to be members. I mean, I guess for them, they feel it inflates their credibility, but there's nothing honorable about that. You know, that guy wasn't a made guy. He was never close to being a made guy. It wasn't the truth. Then the one thing that saved Gizmo from Artesia, we're going to one of Chewy's main guys, Stranger was there. He was across the way. And they were both trying to get at each other, right? They were both trying to get at each other. And the one thing that saved Gizmo from Artesia was that he landed up in the cell with a bunch of guys from Wine Gardens. And those guys had his back. They were his soldiers, like Largo and Little Badger, Mousy from Rancho San Pedro, and Smiley from City Terrace. All those guys were in his cell, and they surrounded him, you know, like, hey, man, we're with you. Nothing's going to happen to you, you know, because they knew, they believed he was in the right. Now, there's two schools of thought. Again, there's Stranger's camp that believe they're in the right, they're defending the right guy, and then there's Chewy's camp who believe that they're supporting the right guy, right? Now, literally, this isn't supposed to happen because nobody is supposed to be loyal to one carnal. Nobody is. And Chewy was all schooled like that, right? But they were in a war, and I understand the position he was in. But Chewy was not a rampant, foaming at the mouth, rabid dog, right? He was very calculated. In fact, in retaliation for that war, Chewy had ordered 3 individuals eliminated in an El Monte body shop, which was a really big thing. In fact, they sought the death penalty on Chewy in a RICO case. It's one of the early cases where the Fed sought out a death penalty case on a gang, right? Particularly a gang member, which is Mariano Martinez. So this story, I mean, it involves a lot. It's a lot to unpack when you really think about it. There's a lot of details that just aren't normally known to the average individual. You know, people see this, they hear little tidbits of it, but the reality is this was a pretty serious war within the organization. You know, Pelican Bay went through it, the war of C&D, the general populations went through it when these cardenales were telling people not to mess or do things for other cardenales because they were on the lista. That was sacrilegious in itself. Involving outsiders in organizational business was unheard of. It's the norm now. This is the Edgar generation mafia where everybody knows everything. And everybody's wife talks about it on TikTok. They have the prison wives, they have all this stuff, and people are involved deeply in the organization. It was never like this before. But this is the genesis of it, where camaradas were voicing their opinions and lining up with other carnales and saying they represent this carnal and they're on this tío's crew and speaking about the lista, where camaradas would never even know a carnal was on the lista until boom, he was eliminated. But it like I said, it metastasized like a cancer. It spread. You know, when you get cancer, right, you have a primary malignancy. And it goes through this process called metastases. It spreads, right? Once it spreads, it goes through another process called autogenesis, right? Where it starts building capillaries. These little pieces of tumor, these little cells, malignant cells, start building themselves and feeding themselves with capillaries, right? And say a piece spreads to the liver and the lungs and the spleen. This gross metastases, right? But this is what happened with this war. It went through a metastases, right? A war of words. It went through Pelican Bay SHU. It went to the mainlands and general population in California Department of Corrections. It hit the county jail. It hit the streets. And this did more damage to the organization than has ever been known to the public. Hundreds of camaradas got hit behind this. People got washed up, locked up, checked in, debriefed. They had no choice, right? They were caught in a bad spot. Where literally you're not supposed to pick a side. They were forced to pick a side, right? Unknowingly, they picked the wrong side. Whatever side they fell on. A lot of people got washed up. A lot of people got hurt. People were eliminated. And that's the reality of it. You know, and Chewy was just responding to being shot at. He did what any gangster should do. He fought back. He fought back. And ultimately, Chewy survived. Chewy survived. He didn't end up on the lista. He went to the feds. He walked with the big dogs. He was in ADX with them. He had carnales all around him. Where everybody else failed. Individuals like Fox, Victorio, Tati, all those guys aligned against Chewy, right? Fox is in a precarious situation now, but Victorio was eliminated. Tati was eliminated. Stranger checked in. Chacho disappeared and checked in. All these guys that aligned against Chewy fell by the wayside, and Chewy survived. So what does that tell you? That Chewy's so good at speaking that he was able to hoodwink and bamboozle everybody? No. Chewy was right. That's what my heart believes, right? And that's what I know to be true. Again, other people are going to see this through a different prism. And they're going to say, no, that's not what it was, right? But literally, the proof is in the pudding. Who survived this? Because Victorio and Fox were hidden down the street when this happened to Chewy, right? They were hidden down the street, and they sent a camarada to do it. They sent a camarada to go do the work that they were supposed to do themselves. They were present for it. They didn't do it. In fact, At a later date, Gizmo from Artesia caught Fox and had him at gunpoint and called Chewy right there. I have him right here. I have him right here. I'll eliminate him right now. He's only alive today because Chewy gave him that pass. That's the only reason Fox is alive today. Chewy gave him a pass. Told Gizmo, no, let him go. If we have to do it, we'll do it at a later date. And Fox survived, right? But everybody else fell by the wayside. So that was my friend, Chewy. You know, I'm sad that he's gone. I'm sad that he got life in prison. I'm sad that he never got to rejoin with his daughter, Angelica, and never got to reunite with his girlfriend, Jessica. I'm sad for all those things, but I'm happy that he was my friend, you know. I hope that he's at peace, wherever he's at, you know. And it was just this is a little insight into that entire quagmire, that entire fiasco that was the war. It wasn't just Chewy shooting at Stranger and Stranger shooting at Chewy. There was a whole lot behind this. And I'm certain I'm missing, 75% of the details, right? Because I've spoke to people on both sides of it, right? And I was there. I was listening to it in the Bay, and I knew Chewy. I watched this stuff go down. I experienced part of this campaign myself. So I see it through my prism. And that's how I see it. With that said, folks, I hope you enjoyed this piece on Mariano Martinez and the Civil War in the Mexican Mafia. We'll bring more fire content to you soon. As always, peace out. Have a great weekend and stay safe.
This is Enriquez. Nickname Boots.